There we go. All right. So all of those sequences that we did yesterday is going to boil into what we're about to do today. 10.1 is the dynamics of population growth. Population growth is a mathematical model that demonstrates both positive, which means your population is growing, or a negative, which means your population is dying off and becoming extinct. Okay, so we can have multiple populations. We've got the human population. What else populates?
Animals.
Animals.
Technically, we are animals. We want to be technical.
Insects. Think science. What do you put in the little peach? There you go. Bacteria grows. Okay. We have different types of growth. The first one is called continuous growth. So continuous growth is the dynamic change or an effect at all times. Okay. So that's going to kind of be like your bacteria. It just keeps multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. Okay. We then have something called discrete growth, which is definition as a sudden change in the population after a certain period of time. Oh, my board is so off. Fix this problem. So, Jonathan brought up a good point when he was already neb-nosing through my notes up there. Discrete growth is, how many of you have heard of the baby boomers?
I have.
What decade was that in?
I can't tell you.
After World War II.
After World War II.
50s,
Okay, after World War II, you know, everybody decided to get pregnant. Boom, baby, 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 baby. That's discrete growth. Okay. We don't have a baby boom every year. We don't have a baby boom every 6 months. Okay. It's just a sudden boom. Here they are. Okay. So they also happen in transitions. A transition is a regular interval of time between the changes in the population. So, as a human race, how often do we have children?
Every day.
Every 9 months.
Every 9 months. Okay? Technically, I can pop out a baby, get pregnant again, and have another one in 9 months. It's not healthy for your body, but that's our transition period. It happens every 9 months.
I don't know of any girl that liked to be pregnant or has liked being pregnant.
Are you kidding me?
My
friend-
my sister, yeah, she.
My friend Becky loves it.
Oh, Becky,
Like-
how many children Becky got? Well, Becky need to calm it down.
I mean, my cousin has 5 babies now.
I know, my mom's got 4. But
I
she-
mean-
It's the same period. No.
Yes, that's a period. Yes. Okay. So, discrete growth examples. That can be baby boom. Okay. Another discrete example, and most of you don't think about it because we're talking population right now. But money accounts.
I mean a bull run.
Look, if I could
If we're
spell
talking
today.
about income.
The banking account.
Okay. So it draws interest at regular intervals.
Banking account.
Yes.
Money.
Money, banking. We all talking about that green stuff. Not that green stuff.
Now.
No,
that
no,
up there,
no. All right. So what you're going to be able to answer as we go through this section. What will happen to a given population over time? Is it dying off? Is it getting bigger? What are the long-term patterns of growth, if there are any? Your transition rule. When does the change happen and how is it being changed? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Population sequence, first off, is a list of numbers. So when we talked about the list of numbers yesterday with sequences, that's what that is. So your population sequence starts at P sub 0. P sub 0 is your initial population. Okay, it's your initial population. How many humans do we start with? How many rabbits do we start with? How many elephants do we start with? Okay, whatever's about to grow, how many of them do I start with? P sub n then is defined as the size of the population in n transitions. So, in other words, P sub 1 means one transition has happened. So let's say my initial population was 20. At P sub 1, one transition, my population is now 24. So then population after 2 transitions, we're now at 28. At 3 transitions, I'm now at 32. Okay. You'll start to deduce a pattern that happens.
Why did you circle P1?
I mean, I could have circled P2, P3. He's like, is it special?
Right.
No. That's just first transition. All right. So I've got 2 examples of how this works. So example 1 says, the number of cars produced is expected to increase by 25 every population sequence. Okay, so your transition is how often is this happening? How often is this happening?
Every 2 months.
Every 2 months. So my transition is 2 months. My transition is 2 months. So P sub 1 means 2 months have gone past. So if we started in January, we're now in March. Okay. If 2 transitions have gone by, how many months is that?
May.
We're at 4 months.
Oh, it's 4.
Which is May. Okay, that would be May.
July,
We're now
6,
3,
July.
so we're 6 months in. Okay, so I can easily get that by taking my n value and multiplying it by my transition. So n1 times 2, 2 months. N2 times 2, 4 months have gone past. N3 times 2, 6 months have gone past. What's happening every 2 months?
It's growing.
It's growing. What exactly is happening every 2 months?
It's being multiplied.
25
Being multiplied
cars.
by what?
2.
Uh-uh.
I mean, that.
Read the question again.
Cars are increasing.
Yeah, cars
It's
are-
increasing by what?
25.
25. So what does that mean mathematically?
It's quarter.
You're increasing by 25.
You
What
add
is
25 each
18?
time.
Huh?
You
You're
add
adding.
25.
You add 25. Okay? So my transition rule is to add 25 each time.
So it
So-
started at 100.
Okay? So hold up. Stop right there. He said I started at 100. It says it started with 100 cars. So that's my P sub 0. Okay? This is P sub 0. It's already written there, but I'm going to write it again. Okay? That's P sub 0. Okay. So in January, I'm going to write that over here. So I'm trying to keep everybody on the same page here because for some reason in January I have 100 cars. Okay. From that, I'm now adding what?
25.
25 cars. So that gives me 125 cars. And how many months have gone past?
2.
2. So we're now in March. So in March, I now have 125 cars.
That's P1.
And that's P sub 1.
Okay.
Okay. I've only taken one step, but that one step took us 2 months to do. Okay.
I only got you 25 cars.
You only made 25 cars in 2 months. That's it.
China.
Okay. Got you. Okay. So 2 more months go by. So we're now in May. And I'm now up to 150 cars. Okay. I can keep going. So P sub 2 is now 150, and we're at 4 months. P sub 3 is 175. Okay. From this, you should be able to answer these 3 questions. The first one, they want to know how many months have passed if I'm now at P sub 9.
16.
What?
325.
It's 18 months.
18 months. We're at 9 transitions. P sub 9 means I'm at 9 transitions.
18 months.
Oh, duh.
Each transition is worth 2 months, which means I'm now at 18. So we're about 1.5 years in. Question? Did you have a question? Or were you just about to answer?
Calculator down.
Your calculator died? Oh no. I have batteries for that.
Oh.
Take these and pitch them for you. Okay. Part pieces. What is the number of cars produced after 5 transitions?
There's 3, so just do 75.
225.
No, just do 50. 50 plus 175.
Okay.
And that equals 225.
So here we stopped at 3 transitions. P sub 4 then would be 200, which means P sub 5 is 225. What is the number of cars produced after 1 year?
300.
Huh?
You said 300.
No. You're close.
325.
350. 9.
Hold on. P sub 5. How many months is P sub 5?
That's 5. So we got
It's
6
425.
months to go.
No. Whoa.
What?
This is what I didn't want to happen.
Low.
Hold on.
'Cause it-
Stop. How many months is P sub 5?
Oh,
It's
it's
5
400.
No,
Not 5
That
months.
was 5.
Every transition, 5 transitions, every one is 2 months.
Oh, it's like
So how many months is this one?
2.
10.
Yeah, shit.
Okay. This is 5 transitions, and every transition is worth 2. So this is 10 months. Well, if I want a year, how many months do I need?
6.
6. So I only need to go 1 more transition.
So 225 plus 25 is 250.
So there's 250 cars.
Didn't someone say
You
250?
have to be careful about how much the transition period means. So 2 months means it's happened 6 times in a year. So you're looking for P sub 6. Does that make sense? Yes, no, or blankly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
There you go.
question. Okay, we got one more, and then I'm really going to give you the short trick. I know I'm so evil, but I love you. We good? Anybody still need this up? Bam. There it is. Michael expects to double his profit every 6 months on his investments and has already earned $120. So what's my transition period? How often is this happening?
Every 6 months.
Every 6 months. And what's happening every 6 months?
It's times 2.
It's doubling, which means it's times 2. Okay, so we're multiplying by 2 every 6 months. So P sub 0 would start me out where?
120.
120, which means P sub 1 is?
240.
Which means P sub 2 is?
480.
Which means P sub 3 is?
960.
P sub 4?
1920.
P sub 5?
3840.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. If I'm at P sub 1, how many months have gone past?
6.
6 months. P sub 2
A
is?
year.
1 year. Or 12 months if you want to keep it in months. P sub 3 then is? 1.5. P sub 4 is? 2. 2.5. So, first question wants to know, how much money does Michael have in the 8th generation? Well, when they're talking 8th generation, that means they want P sub 8.
$30,720.
$30,720. How many years has gone past if we're in P sub 8?
Like
4 years. Okay, so we've gone through 8 generations. Each generation is 6 months, so that means 2 times a year. So 8 divided by 2 means we're at 4 years. Okay, so in 4 years, he now has $30,720. Okay, how much profit has Michael made in his 3rd year of investing? So if I'm talking 3rd year, I actually want P sub what?
P sub
P sub 6.
6. Okay, again, twice a year. So if we're in the 3rd year, it's happened 6 times. So I truly want P sub 6. What value?
7,680.
$7,680 in 3 years. And finally, how many years into the future does P sub 36 represent for Michael? How many years have gone back past if we're in 36 transitions? 18. Again, 36, it happens twice a year, so we're at 18 years have gone past. 8 plus plus, my friends. We're kicking boo-tag. Questions?
That's it.
All right. So, let me tell you this. Linear growth, arithmetic sequences. So, yesterday we talked about arithmetic sequences means I'm adding or subtracting the same number over and over and over again. Well, guess what? That creates a linear growth model, which means if I would graph this, it would create a line. Arithmetic sequence creates a line.
How much are we doing today?
We're going to finish this page and we're done. Okay. So, when you think line, what's the basic equation that you think of?
Wait, what?
And I'll start you off.
MX plus B.
I was thinking that.
Y equals mx plus b. Yes, you can put it directly over your graph because we're not graphing. Okay. We're not graphing. So yes, you can write it directly over your graph. So in this instance, What did M represent? Does anybody remember what B represented?
M.
B
B is
represented time. Something. I don't know. It's been like 1,000 years.
Woo! Going back to like math 1,
Right.
Man, people don't forgot this by now.
3 years back. Backtrack.
Math 1. I can't do that.
Do you remember when I graphed what I started with
Oh, I remember.
on this equation?
Run over.
Rise over run. So that's your M. This was your slope,
Oh,
which
that's
was
what I
rise over run.
I said that.
She
I'm
said
sorry,
so.
I missed it. Did she really?
Mhm.
My bad, Zoe.
Yeah.
Don't beat me up.
I wasn't going to.
B was your y-intercept.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you see.
That's cool.
So B was your y-intercept, or in other words, your starting point. You would have always graphed that first, and then you use your slope to move from there, up and over, or down and over, depending on whether it was decay or whether it was positive. We're going to use the same equation to do this. Okay, because it creates a line, so why not? Why can't I use this? So B is your y-intercept. This now is going to be P sub 0. It's your starting point, right? Y-intercept was your starting point. Your slope is now going to be your transition rule. So what's it going up by or down by?
Transition rule or roll?
Rule. R-U-L-E.
12.
Okay. So let's take a look at this.
Wait.
First off,
I don't know.
talk transition. How often is my numbers changing in this problem? A city is considered a new law to restrict the monthly amount of garbage allowed into the local landfill to a maximum of 12 tons a month. Although there is currently only 800 tons of garbage in the landfill, there is a concern that the landfill will reach its maximum capacity of 2,000 tons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
12.
So
Okay,
how
it's
often?
12 times a month.
12 tons a month. So what does that mean my transition is?
12
Mm,
times a month.
1 month.
1 month.
Oh.
Okay.
Gets to 8 months.
What's happening in that month, Zoe?
12.
What's happening? Am I gaining it? Am I losing it? What's happening?
Gaining.
I'm gaining. So I'm adding 12 tons every month. That's my rule. Okay. So the transition is the time period, and the transition rule is how much.
Are we supposed to add the ton?
Okay.
Just 12.
So if I started my sequence, it would start at 800, and then it would go up to 812, and then 824, and then 836, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Well, what if I told you I want to know how many tons you're going to have in, I don't know, 76 months? You're going to have to sit here and add 12, and add 12, and add 12, and add 12, like we did yesterday.
I will do that.
This changes this.
You know that.
Okay. If you prefer to just sit there and add 12 and add 12 and add 12 and add 12, I don't really care. Okay. But this will shorten your progress. So my equation is y equals. What did we say was happening? It was increasing by
What?
Or 12.
12 every month. Okay. So 12 becomes my M now.
Okay.
Throw something in my room one more time and I'm writing you up. X plus, what's my starting point in this one?
What?
What number did I start at?
800.
We started at 800 tons. So there's your equation.
So,
Okay. So you just have to be careful. Y is going to represent the amount of tons. Okay. X is going to represent the time. But be careful. Your transition should be in months. So be careful with that. Okay. So Y is how many tons of trash you have, and X is the time in months. So the first question they want to know is how much garbage will there be in the landfill 5 years from now? So we're 5 years in the future.
So 12 times 5 plus 800.
So Devin said I'm going to do 12 times 5 plus 800. What's that give me?
860.
Guess what? You're wrong.
Yeah, that is.
I figured because it didn't.
The number didn't make sense, did it?
Yeah, it didn't.
What did Devin do wrong?
He didn't add the months.
Okay. Remember, X is time in months. So 5 years have gone past, but that's not what represents X.
So why you heard that?
60.
60.
Right,
So the first thing I have to figure out in 5 years, 12 months a year, that means 60 months have gone
But
past.
hey, I did something right. So.
Listen, but that was a learning experience, so don't take it as I was trying to like, please don't, because you would not be the only person to do this. They did it third period. I'm sure somebody else is going to do it. Okay, so instead of replacing X with 5, we would technically replace it with 60. Okay, so you've got to pay attention to that transition period. That's where it'll catch you.
15, 20.
You said what?
15, 20.
So I have 1,520 tons of garbage in my landfill after 5 years. We still good. Okay. We haven't overflowed it yet. How long before it reaches its 2,000 ton capacity? So when I go to solve this one, what do I plug in and where does it go?
It goes in X.
They're giving us tons. So where does that number go?
It's 100.
It is 100. But I'm trying to do this as an
X.
equation. Ah,
Okay, it goes, I don't know. I didn't do it how you want to do it.
it's in tons. What variable is tons?
Wow. I mean, B, whatever. You know.
Your Y.
Oh.
2,000 equals 12 times X plus 800.
Oh.
Okay. They gave you tons, so that now replaces your Y value.
So what do you do? Subtract 800 and divide by 12?
Yep. Subtract 800.
This that old school, man.
Oh,
That's,
yeah.
Oh, she said
We
weren't
bringing
gonna
it
be doing
back.
that.
So, yes, Zoe, you're 100% correct. And I honestly don't care how you got that answer. If that's how you want to do it, rock it out. Okay. So, 100 months have gone past. If I want to figure out how many years that is, what would I do?
You do
100 divided by 12.
100 divided by 12. So this is in months. If I want it in years, because
It's
depending on what they're going to
8.3
ask you, you get what?
It's 8.3, so 8 years.
8.3, so a little over 8 years. Okay. A little over 8 years. Question.
Dang, this hour taking long.
We're actually going to
Skip
start
it.
here tomorrow.
True.
Yes.